Why does losing love feel quite literally like going through drug withdrawal? Well, the research on this is absolutely wild, but incredibly clear. Your brain simply does not care and does not distinguish between losing a romantic partner and detoxing from a highly addictive substance like cocaine. Crazy, right? When you fall in love, your midbrain's reward center, specifically this area called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, just floods your brain with dopamine. It literally learns to view your partner as this essential survival reward. So when they're suddenly gone, you're not just feeling sad. You are experiencing a severe neurochemical crash and a state of profound, overwhelming craving. And the neurological reality of that pain is actually visible in the brain's social pain network. There's a specific region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or DACC. Now, this is the exact same region of your brain that lights up like a Christmas tree on a brain scan when you burn your hand on a stove or break a bone. Think about it from an evolutionary standpoint for a second. Human survival used to depend entirely on the pack. Losing a partner was a literal threat to your life. So your brain evolved an alarm system that registers social rejection the exact same way it processes a physical injury. So when you say your heart literally physically hurts, you are 100% right. So if we look at the symptoms of drug withdrawal right next to heartbreak withdrawal, the overlap is just staggering. People going through both of these things experience the exact same physiological symptoms. We're talking profound sleep disruption, totally messed up appetites, that heavy physical tightness in your chest, and just really severe obsessive thought patterns. All of this is driven by that sudden depletion of dopamine, mixed with a massive spike in cortisol, which is your body's main stress hormone. So give yourself some grace here. You aren't just missing someone. Your entire nervous system is in a state of acute, panicked withdrawal. Now, this next part is absolutely crucial for those of you dealing with an anxious attachment style. A lot of times, early childhood experiences can wire your brain to be highly sensitive to abandonment. So when a breakup actually happens, your brain's emotional alarm system, the amygdala, goes into complete overdrive. Researchers call this a protest response. It's basically a massive hyperactivation of your nervous system, screaming at you to do literally whatever it takes to restore that bond. It creates those overwhelming, uncontrollable urges to text, call, or just show up at your ex's door. And it makes recovery so much harder because your brain is treating the breakup like a genuine life-or-death emergency. It helps to think of the whole heartbreak experience kind of like an iceberg. Above the surface, you've got the visible distress, right? The crying, the venting to friends. But beneath the surface, that underlying anxious attachment is actively shutting down the logic center of your brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. Usually, this is the part of your brain that steps in to regulate your emotions and give you some rational perspective. But during a breakup, especially for an anxious mind, that logical control center goes completely offline. You're left entirely at the mercy of your limbic system, which is why those physical and emotional withdrawal symptoms feel so incredibly impossible to manage. And this brings us to a massive modern-day complication. Your dopamine-starved brain is desperate. It will do absolutely anything for a quick fix. And unfortunately, the perfect dopamine dispensing machine is sitting right there in your pocket. See, your brain really doesn't know the difference between seeing your ex in person and seeing their name pop up on your phone. Because of that, digital stalking becomes this incredibly destructive habit. You are desperately looking for the neurochemical you lost, and social media is just serving up a toxic, highly accessible counterfeit version of it. Psychologists actually call this the slot machine effect. Checking their social media acts as an intermittent reinforcement cycle. You never know what you're going to get when you check their page, right? Sometimes they post, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they look ridiculously happy, sometimes they don't. The crazy thing about behavioral psychology is that just the mere anticipation of reward releases a tiny little dopamine hit. But here is the absolute danger of doing this. Every single time you check, every time you get that tiny, pathetic little hit of dopamine, you are reinforcing the neural pathway of that addiction. You are literally taking your withdrawal clock and resetting it all the way back to zero. This is exactly why implementing a full, absolute social media block, going full no contact, is not about being petty. It's really not an emotional reaction at all. You have to start viewing it as a strictly necessary medical protocol. To heal, you literally have to starve those addiction circuits. Look, you wouldn't expect someone recovering from drug addiction to keep a little bit of their drug on the nightstand, right? So you cannot expect your anxious brain to heal while you still have an open tab to the source of its withdrawal. Muting them just isn't going to cut it. You need the neurological stability that only a total, undeniable block can give you. Knowing all of this actually helps us build a very realistic neurochemical recovery map. Honestly, just seeing this timeline can drop your anxiety levels significantly because it proves that what you are feeling is totally normal and, more importantly, temporary. Days 1 through 7 are your acute withdrawal. Cortisol is spiking, dopamine is crashing, sleep is basically a myth. Then, days 8 to 21 often feel even worse. This is peak suffering, where the initial shock wears off and that profound dopamine craving really sinks its teeth in. Weeks 3 to 8 are what we call the subacute grind. The pain starts to come in waves instead of just sitting on your chest 24/7. And finally, around months 2 to 4, your brain enters the memory reconsolidation phase, where you can actually start putting your identity back together.
That memory reconsolidation phase is actually a really beautiful process driven by adaptive neuroplasticity. Basically, every time you recall a memory of your past relationship, your brain temporarily makes that memory malleable, kind of like wet clay, before storing it away again. Over time, as long as you aren't injecting fresh pain and contact into the mix, your brain physically updates these memories. It naturally softens the emotional intensity attached to them. Thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain is actively reorganizing itself, weakening those old painful attachment pathways, and literally clearing the brush to make room for healthy new connections.
But here's the catch. Your brain needs your help to pull this off. To help your anxious brain stabilize, you have got to commit to some firm structural steps. First up, you have to stick to a 30 to 90-day strict no-contact protocol to stop the dopamine relapses cold. Second, get moving. Exercise isn't just about getting revenge body fit. Working out releases endorphins to manage the literal physical pain, plus a protein called BDNF, which is basically miracle grow for your brain to build those new neural pathways. And third, lean heavy on your social support system. Hanging out with friends and family releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. You absolutely do not need romantic love to get an oxytocin fix. Platonic love is incredibly neurologically therapeutic right now. Finally, we have to be real about when it's time to bring in professional support to help rewire these pathways. Because an anxious attachment style so often links a current breakup to much deeper, older childhood wounds and fears of abandonment, that protest response we talked about can just get stuck. Getting into therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is amazing because it provides the external emotional regulation that your prefrontal cortex is currently too exhausted to do on its own. A good professional can help you literally rewire those obsessive thought patterns and build the cognitive tools you need to genuinely heal. I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Your brain is an unbelievably adaptable, resilient organ. It successfully wired itself to love, which means it is fully 100% capable of rewiring itself to heal. This pain? It's just a temporary neurochemical state. So the question is, are you going to let your midbrain keep you trapped in a miserable cycle of withdrawal? Or are you going to put up the boundaries you need to heal your brilliant mind and get it ready for the love you actually deserve?